Well, good morning. Thank you for coming back. Good to see you guys. If you're a guest with us, so grateful that you're here, and you're here on a really tricky day because I'm very nervous right now. Not to be on stage. I'm very honored to be in this position here connected, but I'm nervous because what we're going to talk about today. Because I'm going to mess with you on the very first opening line here, and I'm asking you, if you're online, don't tune out. There's going to be temptation to do that and say, he's wrong, right from the beginning. And you'll feel the social pressure in this room if you get up and go. And so if you have to go to the bathroom, sorry, you're going to have to hold it for a couple minutes. You're going to look really weird getting out, because this is a tense moment. Because I'm going to mess with your cliche. There's a Christian cliche that I've said for years. And I've been really convicted by the Spirit that this probably, and I'm pretty confident, Jesus would never say this. And here's the statement. Jesus, we claim, tells us to love the sinner and hate the sin. Many of us have probably said that before. That would not be spoken by Jesus. And I want to prove it to you today. But to let the tension sit there, I'm going to come back to that statement in just a couple of minutes, but I want to first give you some big picture stuff for a second. Over the first week here, last week was my first Sunday here in lead pastor role following Pastor Brad Calajanan, and we have really decided to spend 8 weeks really just laying out some theological lanes of thought, so that we can really allow all of us to say, hey, do I like where we're at and what we're saying? Because these are going to be, there's going to be more than this, but predominantly these are going to be the 8 themes theologically that we're going to go after for years to come. And so I just thought right out of the gate, let's spend some time really just saying, here's where we're at, and this is what we believe. So last week I was really clear. We believe Jesus is the end game. What that means is Jesus, we don't believe, is just an end, a means to an end. He's not the way to the treasure called heaven, which we know he is, but the goal is not that we just get to heaven. The goal is Jesus. Because if you're using Jesus to get to heaven, you're not going to like heaven, because heaven is about Jesus. So Jesus is our end game. He is our treasure. And so today, I want to move the needle further for us as a church, and it's this statement. We believe, at Cornerstone, we believe that the church is the answer to culture. This is a complicated one, because I know there's tons of tension in the air about, the political issues, the racial issues. Unless your head has been buried in the sand, you know that this is a complicated time to be in our country and, frankly, to be a preacher. Because everything that I say seems to be misunderstood by one camp or the other. And so we have political tension on both sides, and we have racial tensions, and we have this spirit of offense in our country right now, to the point where I kind of feel like saying, I'm offended that you're offended. Like we're all offended about something, and so there's just tension everywhere. And I would dare say some of that happens because we haven't stepped up as the grander church to really make a difference in culture. And in some ways, I would argue that the capital C church, meaning all churches, the body of Christ, for generations, we've not been as in the forefront culturally as I believe we should be. And I want to make a strong argument for that today. I want to first help us kind of, again, see some big picture thought on why I believe we've not continued to have cultural influence as local churches and then the greater church. The first is this. I believe we've lost our influence in culture because we haven't been unified as a body of Christ. And so I said last week, if you were with us, that I was really struggling because I didn't miss church shopping or church hopping here in West Michigan. It's not real popular in other parts of the country because there's not as many churches. And so church shopping, by the way, is totally different. Church shopping is where you go through a season of discernment where you're saying, okay, where is God calling us to? Like, I want you to run to a calling and to a church family. But church hopping is just, Ken ticked me off today, so I'm going somewhere else. That's just kind of jumping around without really, if you leave angry, you're going to get angry there too. And so when people jump into Cornerstone and they're angry, I'm like, it's just going to be a matter of time till I tick you off too, or something at church ticks you off. And so I would rather have addressed the issue right up front. And so the one thing I didn't miss about West Michigan was that, well, there are so many churches. So I actually wanted to do a quick search to just say, what are we up against here? So I just counted from Rockford to down to Dorr, and then over to Jenison, Hudsonville. I didn't include Holland. And then I went over to Lowell, and I didn't include Lansing. So that parameter, take a guess how many churches I found as I did some Google searches about these cities in this sphere of influence area that we're in. Just throw out some numbers at me. 200, okay, 200, we got 200. Anybody? Somebody started like at 10,000 at the last service, 789, okay, so we have a sociologist who really has done her homework here. 789, what else do we have? 315. 600. Anybody want to get to 1,000? You really don't think there's 1,000? Okay, we got 1,000. We got some hands for 1,000. Here's the answer. Oh, you got it. One. There is one church, and that's our problem. As long as we keep thinking there's all these churches, we are not unified. And so I want to challenge you, and I'm going to make my commitment to you as well. One of the practices we've had at Cornerstone, and Brad was really careful about this for 30 years, we're not going to be a church that just bashes other churches publicly. We're going to honor them. We're going to bless them because, frankly, do you realize God is bigger than us? Did you know that? And if God is bigger than us, that means we don't have all the answers. So that means we need other local churches that can have different expressions of connection with God that may be different than Cornerstone because we don't have it all right. But if we add to the story of all of these other local churches, then we actually have one unified church that can get a better perspective on the grandness of God. But as long as we look at the different theologies that are out there and just say, well, I can't stand you because you don't believe in infra-superlapsarianism like I do, do we not understand? We are one church. And as long as we have this mindset that these other churches are wrong and we are right, we're like what Chuck Swindoll said. And he says, I grieve because it seems like the church is the only place that puts their firing squad in a circle. And as long as we keep shooting at each other, we're not going to have influence in culture. There's a second reason I don't think we have a lot of influence in culture, and it's because of this. I believe that we've not always remembered our core purpose as a church. You realize, let's just big picture again for a moment. The church really is God's tool and method through which he will send forth his mission. So you could argue that the local church doesn't have a mission, but it's that God has a church. So God has a mission that happens to be funneled through the church. Point being, God is love. And if we look just from a big perspective, God is love. And Jesus made it really clear. He took all the commandments in the Old Testament and he nailed them down to just really one and then two. He said, here's the great commandment. Love God and love people. And if you, my church, says God, if you are going to live out my mission of loving God, having a vertical relationship, and loving people, if you can get that right, the world will be changed forever. But I think we've gotten off target on that because we've, again, not loved one another very well at times. And then we've definitely not loved the culture, the people around us. And so if you really nail it down, the core of what the church is supposed to do, we should be on the forefront of bringing love and really blessing to the world. We should be the ones that learn how to listen and care for where people are at in order to invite them into that beautiful walk with God. Pastor Alex from Heritage Hill, our campus pastor, went and did a word on the street this week. And he thought, it'd be just really good to hear, what do people around the Grand Rapids area just really think about culture and how people should connect with each other? And so he asked that question of some people, and you'll be interested by these answers here.
All right, would you agree that the world seems a little bit divided right now?
Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah.
A lot more love is needed.
Okay. My next question was going to be, what do you think is the answer to culture for the division that you see?
Love. A lot more love.
Okay. What does that mean to you?
Love is just understanding people that you don't understand, or being open to understanding those people.
Education.
What do you mean by that?
Getting a more broad view of each side's view.
Okay.
So, yeah.
More conversation between
Yeah, more
people.
conversation, more education on how other people's views are different, but it's okay.
Less political division.
Okay.
And more love and inclusiveness. And all of us are responsible for that.
I think having conversations, even with people that have opposing views,
Right.
but I think talking and getting an understanding, because we actually will find out that we're more alike than we are different.
Isn't it interesting that culture, it seems, is getting it more right sometimes than the church does? You heard it over and over again. I just wish somebody would listen to me. I just wish somebody would bring more love into the world. And that's really the core call that God places on the church. And if we would get that right, I believe we would really make a difference in culture. So with that in mind, I want to give us the fast track on how we can do that. And I want to give you some scriptural, I want to do a deep dive into a piece of scripture in just a minute to get there. But I want to come back to that Christian cliche, because if we can get this Christian cliche right, I think it will change our thinking in a way that will say, we can do this. So let me go back to that. Jesus said, so we claim, because I've quoted this too, Jesus said, love the sinner and hate the sin. And we blitz that all over the place. I'm convinced Jesus would never say that. This is what Jesus would say if we're going to look at his teachings in the Gospels. Here's what he says. Jesus says, love the sinner and hate our own sin. You get that? You see, as long as we stay in our Christian bubbles and stay nice and safe within our churches and cast stones at everybody's behavior out there, we're getting it all wrong. He said it so clearly. Stop looking at the speck in their eye and look at the plank of sin in your own eye. And then when the woman was caught in adultery, Jesus said, who among you, and think about Jesus speaking right into culture. He looks at everybody with all this anger. They're saying, she's a sinner. And Jesus stops and he says, if any one of you is without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. You see, Jesus showed us how to behave in culture as a church, right there. So if we can just change our thinking around there saying, wait, I'm going to love the sinner and hate my own sin. What that does is instantly put you on level playing field of saying, wait a minute, my arm can lock in with your arm because we both struggle with the same issues. The difference is God has transformed me inside and taken me to a place by his grace, and I want to offer that grace to you. That opens up so many lanes of opportunity for loving your neighbor and connecting with and praying for your enemy, living out the teachings of Jesus Christ. There's a way of thinking about this, about a mission that I believe if every local church would then do this, we could in a unified way be a grander church and really, truly make a difference in culture by thinking this way. So if you realize what Jesus is trying to do is get the church and make her holy. He's transforming us, like what I talked about last week. When you have a relationship with Christ, you change from the inside out and you're made holy, which means you're set apart. Now, if you're set apart from the ways of the world, that's what it means to be holy. Now, here's how the church needs to function. We need to stop being set apart from the world. We need to be set apart for the world. I'll say that again. We are to be not set apart from the world. We are to be set apart for the world. So when we come together in worship, our goal is to get really an awareness of what's going on inside of us. Lord, forgive me for how I betrayed you this week. Cleanse me from within. You feel the weight lifted. You feel refreshed. You feel set apart from your behavior from Saturday night or from Wednesday afternoon at work when you were doing that shady business deal, and you repent of that sin. You get transformed. I'm set apart for the purposes of now going back into the world and offering the same love and grace I've just received from Jesus Christ. You see, this has been the pattern of God throughout history, and I want to prove it to you. I want to share with you that some of you, this may be your very favorite verse. I hope if you've been following Christ with your life, you've got some life verses that are impacting the way you live your life. One of them that's very, very popular is Jeremiah 29:11. Any of you have Jeremiah 29:11 as one of your favorite verses? There's a couple right there. Like, I love Jeremiah 29:11, and I'll read it to you. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. Isn't that an encouragement? God has plans for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good. Isn't that good? God has good plans for us, not for disaster, to give you a hope and a future. How can that not be our life verse? I mean, that's a phenomenal, wonderful verse. What I want to do is spend a little bit of time taking you into the context of that verse because it's very messy. And so I want to encourage you, especially those of you online right now, again, don't tune out, and more importantly, don't soundbite what I'm about to say, because we're about to step into some tricky waters, and I could be misunderstood, and I can just see it happening so easily. There's a sound bite, and it's very hard from a preacher standpoint in this way. So hear the big picture of what I'm talking about, and then we can have a dialogue about it, okay? Here we go. So the context of Jeremiah 29:11 is very messy. In that era, this was 700 in that ballpark BC, before Christ came. And you have a split between Israel in the north and Judah in the south. And if you know more of the history of Israel, we used to have the 12 tribes of Israel, and they were split up among themselves in the nation of Israel, the promised land, if you will, as you've maybe heard of it. So there were 10 tribes in the north and 2 in the south. And some people don't realize that Israel went through a civil war, if you will. They split. And you have in the north the nation of Israel. And in the south, you have Judah. Now, Judah had just two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. That's it. And then the other 10 tribes were in the north. What happened during Jeremiah's time was they had a nasty enemy called the Assyrians. And the Assyrians came in and they ransacked everybody in the north. Literally killed people, took them into captivity, destroyed their altars, destroyed their homes, burned, pillaged. It was awful. All of Israel was destroyed. Well, what happened to Judah in the south? I mean, it's a small strip of land, maybe 30 miles now left, and all the rest in the north is gone. It would be the equivalent of, let's say, Canada and the United States, 2 different nations. And China comes in, and they just go on to a blitzkrieg. They come right at China, or China comes right after Canada, and they wipe Canada off the map. I mean, no more hockey, very much. You know, I mean, you have Canadian hockey gone in A, you know, I mean, maybe all of this kind of changes. Like what would we do as a nation if, I mean, I kind of make light of it because I hope that never happens, but what if it did? And we were gathered here right now, and we're saying, my goodness, Canada's just right there, you know? And now China took them over. We would be on our faces before God, repenting and weeping and begging God for protection. Wouldn't we? It'd be a scary time in our nation, watching everything change before our eyes. That's what it was like. Now, guess what happened? Historians debate why this next thing happened, but I kind of have an answer. Because of God. God heard their prayers. So Judah in the south is praying, please God, protect us. And the Assyrians stopped. They come near Jerusalem and they don't attack. and they just backed off. Woo! What would you do? I mean, if suddenly now, China backs off and we're like, we would start to say, God totally answers prayer. And they did. They were celebratory. Then guess what happened? They start to look at their story and they're like, wait a minute. Do you realize what really happened? Do you realize what we have going for us here in Judah? It's actually three things that formed a theology called Zionism. Have any of you ever heard of Zionist theology? I'm about to talk about that here for a moment. Zion, if you've ever sung, not Zion Williamson from the Pelicans, NBA team, right? But that same name, Zion. The Zionist theology literally started to build this idea that we are totally sovereign and protected by God, because they had three things. They had the territory of God. The territory of God literally was like, we're in the promised land. We have Jerusalem. We have the territory God promised to us. No way Assyria can hurt us. They also have the temple of God. What's the temple of God? That's the presence of God. In Jerusalem, they had their sanctuary where God was in the Holy of Holies. And like the presence of the creator of the universe was in this small area. And they were like, we've got the very presence of God. There's no way we're going to be harmed. And they then have this whole concept of the bloodline of the promised Messiah. So they have this feeling of father, son, father, son, father, son bloodline, because they start thinking, wait a minute, we're in the bloodline of Abraham. Abraham goes, I mean, he's the one through whom God said, you're going to have the many nations come forth and the Messiah is going to come out of this bloodline. And they're like, we have bloodline, father, son, father, son. In the north, they go by popular vote. They've lost the dynastic leadership. We here in the South have the bloodline of the coming Messiah. What do you think that did in them? Yep, I'm a stud. Yep, I'm in control. Yeah, we've got it. We cannot be hurt. And they were filled with all of this joy, all of this excitement, like we are totally, totally safe. What can harm us now? Because clearly, if the Assyrians can't get us, who's ever going to get us? Well, this boasting is tricky. Now I'm going to get into murky waters for a minute, because I've been, as a proud American, I love our country and I absolutely am grateful to live here. Absolutely. But I need to observe some things and start to look at my culture. And I'm just going to study where we live. I'm not putting anybody down. Please don't soundbite what I'm about to say. But I'm telling you, I'm just going to study where I live, because that's what we should do. You should know the community, the life that you're living in, the world, the nature of your nation, and where we're at. And I started doing some searches, and I started to realize, we are blessed as well. We have the greatest wealth in the nation. If you take the GDP of these other countries, this is just a map to give you an idea. The United States, if you add the next two nations with the largest, with all of their money, we're still larger than the second and third largest nation's economy combined. And the fourth just puts us over the edge. Like, we are a monster people of wealth. I'm grateful and so happy about that. Militarily, we spend, look at this chart, we spend the next 7 nations combined of all the largest militaries in the world, the next 7 spend less combined than we do as one nation. We are protected militarily. I mean, my dad was in the Army, my father-in-law, many of my close friends serve in the military. I am so grateful that we put that money into military. I am. And look at this. We have the best entertainment in the world. I mean, we've got Mickey Mouse. We're like, now I make light of this and you kind of joke about it, but realize we birthed Disney World. I was in China and I'm telling you, I saw more literally Disney paraphernalia than any other characters that China has produced. Literally, I was seeing it all over the place. We have Hollywood. When I was in Seoul, South Korea, Christine and I went to a mall, and this is what we saw. Christine got a picture next to the mall, next to Nicolas Cage. Now, they may not be cutting edge Hollywood, but they celebrate Hollywood in other countries. I was in Jerusalem, and I saw an all Elvis shop. Like, the world celebrates our entertainment that we provide to the world. Now, you may not agree with me on this, and that's perfectly fine, but I do believe our entertainment protects us. Because who's going to want to hurt the nation that has produced so much laughter in the world, or that has produced so much really entertaining thought in the world? Hear me on this. I'm grateful, so grateful. My dad has worked at Disney for 10 years. I mean, absolutely love the entertainment side of what we offer. But I would dare say we could get very close to a Zionist theology if we're not careful. And let me meddle a little bit more, because I actually do see this as I meet with people. I meet with people frequently just about life. And one guy recently was just sharing some really, as we spent some chunk of time together, he finally came to admit, I've sinned. And I've sinned a lot. And he confessed, and it was beautiful. And then he admitted something that was really telling, and he gave me permission to say this. I started to believe that I could keep sinning because I just knew Jesus would forgive me anyway. And I got to admit, I was convicted by that, because there's times that I take Jesus for granted because he'll just forgive me anyway. Like the little Sunday school kid who literally said, well, if Jesus' job is to forgive, that must mean it's our job to get into trouble. That's kind of what it is. Like, we can start to, before I cast stones on my brothers and sisters who have gone before us in Judah and say, Judah, how could you build up a Zionist theology? How could you think we are protected no matter what? And they really stopped praying, and they stopped really worrying. In some ways, before I can cast stones on my historical family, I need to stop and ask the question, do I have a Zionist theology building in me? Because I really am safe, and you're safe. We have a great military, and we have great entertainment, and that does create a bubble of, while I know you could argue there's a lot of grumpiness at America in different parts of the world, absolutely true. But with our wealth, there's a lot of security that we can go home to today, and I'm so grateful. But I would dare say that might be, because I'm trying to figure out, as I'm looking at post-pandemic and looking at where our culture's at right now, I'm trying to find the root. And I'm wondering, and you can disagree with me, and we can wrestle with this together, but I'm wondering, am I tapping into the root system here? Could it be that some of our problem in this world is that we feel so secure and safe that we've stopped really relying on God, and we've started to kind of think, I can get away with anything because I've done this and never got punished for it. All the while, all we're doing is living out, love the sinner and hate their sin, as we cast stones on everybody else. So I'm challenging us to look in the mirror for a minute and say, have we maybe gotten a poor theology built up within us and an arrogance that has caused us to really have a false sense of pride that has cast judgments on the world, and our culture has stopped listening to us because they see maybe the hypocrisy in us? It's complicated. I know what you're probably thinking right now, like, Ken was a lot funnier last week. It was a lot easier. Like, I understand the heaviness of this. Let me go a little bit further and just meddle just a little bit more, because do you know what happened to Judah right after the Zionist theology built up? So Assyria comes in and they ransack Israel. Gone, just boom, gone. Judah is like, wow, we're gonna, like, did that just happen? Well, of course we're okay. We've got the temple, we've got the territory, we've got the bloodline. God's gonna protect us no matter what. Well, a man by the name of Jeremiah comes along and he starts preaching, and that's all the prophets are preachers. They're coming along and they start preaching, repent. Repent. You guys think that you're safe. And I know Israel fell. I know they fell. And yes, they had sin too. And I know you were casting stones at your countrymen or your enemy in the north. I know, but I'm telling you, Jeremiah says, you have sin too. Well, they didn't listen for decades. He's preaching. I mean, you think my sermons are long. I mean, he was preaching for decades and decades, and he's preaching and preaching and preaching. And literally, he's like, just repent. Finally, it was too late. Babylonians rise up, and they take Assyria and destroy them. Babylon now comes in, and listen to what happens. Jeremiah says, it's too late. You're going to fall. It's too late. But we're going to repent. We're so sorry, Jeremiah. We're so sorry, God. We're repenting right now. And he said, you've lived as an arrogant people for too long. And literally, the Babylonians came in and they took Judah captive. And for the next 70 years, the people of the bloodline of Jesus Christ were in literal captivity. They were exiled away from their home. They were taken literally hundreds, almost 1,000 miles away over the Fertile Crescent to the other side where Babylon was. Ripped from their homes, the temple destroyed, the church destroyed, taken away. They were devastated. That's where we pick up Jeremiah 29:11. Let me read it again and listen to the context. God says, I know you know the plans I have for you, to give you a hope and a future. That's where this verse came from, all of that context. But can I read for you just quickly as we pull this all together? A couple of verses before. Let me look at this, show you this at verse 5. This is what Jeremiah says. I know you've been destroyed. I know you didn't repent. I know your Zionist theology is destroyed. And he calls them up and he says this to them. Now that you're in captivity, listen to what he says. Build homes. Plan to stay in exile. Plant gardens. Eat the food they produce. Marry and have children. Then find spouses for them so that you may have many grandchildren. Multiply. Do not dwindle away. And get this. And work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you. Pray to the Lord for it. And get this, for its peace will determine your peace. Pray for their prosperity. Their peace is your peace. My enemy? Yeah. Then he says, a couple verses later, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans for good and not for disaster. To give you a hope and a future. That beautiful verse was written in the context of a people that were enslaved. And God said, hate your enemy? No. Destroy them? Fight back? No. He said, turn the other cheek. Before Jesus said those words a few years later, love them. Meet them where they're at. Eat their food, join in with their customs, figure out the world you live in. You're not set apart from them. Live for them, bless them. That's the heartbeat of God. That's God's mission for us. And that is a call that I believe he's calling us to the church. And you may say, yeah, but we're not really in exile. Are we not? I would dare say we are. I know people say, and this is, again, dangerous soundbite moment, but hear me on this. I don't believe that America is necessarily a Christian nation. I believe that we really have other gods. I think we run after money, power, pleasure. Those are the gods that we worship in America. We do. We just do. And again, I'm not casting stones. I'm just trying to live in culture, trying to understand where I live. My culture loves money. My culture loves popularity. My culture loves prosperity. My culture absolutely loves pleasure. And my culture loves power. That's our God many times. I know we try to put Jesus at the top as a nation, but we mess that up and we put him down here. And I'm telling you, one day we do know Jesus. Every knee will bow and confess to Jesus as Lord, and he'll be in his rightful place of lordship, but he's really not there yet. So I would dare say I'm with James and Peter in the New Testament when they say, live in exile well. Because as a Christian people, we are exiled from the call that really we should have as a nation, which is to bow our knee to Jesus Christ. But I think we bow our knees to everything but Jesus frequently. And so in that, Jesus says, I have a church, and I have a call on that church to rise up as an exiled people to live well within the culture. Because we could run from it. I mean, if you study Jeremiah a little bit more, you'll find that really in Jeremiah, there's two options. In Jeremiah 28, it says, you have two options, people, while you're in exile. You can either, number one, you can stay out and stay hostile toward your culture, or Jeremiah 29, what I just read to you. You could move in, live, but stay distinct within it. So the people look at us and say, there's something different about you. Yeah, and I'm not going to cast stones at you. I'm going to love you where you're at, to invite you into a journey that I'm on. That's when the church will make a dramatic difference in culture. But as long as we sit back and think we are hidden from the world and casting stones, love the sinner, hate your sin, let's stop and say, wait a minute, let's look at our house first. What's going on in me? Lord, the same grace you've given to me, I want to give to my friend here. God, help me, rescue me from myself. That's a Jesus movement. You see, I don't want to just play church. That's kind of why I'm laying this out for Cornerstone. Like, I want to be all in. I want to be a part of a movement. I don't want to be a part of a monument where we just kind of set up a healthy little, small, cute little church that can do things well, lights and cameras and all that good stuff. I want to be a part of a movement. I want my life to be a part of something that's far bigger than me. Because we get one shot, and frankly, I'm sick of watching the world eat itself alive while the church fails to step up and be who God has called us to be, page after page, chapter after chapter, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, millennia after millennia, just sitting back passively. So I'm going to love my neighbors, and I'm going to pray for my enemies, and I'm going to offer life, and I'm going to listen to people, and I'm going to love them where they're at. And I want to invite you to do the same. And I know this is scary because some of you may be like, that sounds like a liberal agenda to me. Well, I'm sorry if it is, but I really believe Jesus was the perfect Republican and the perfect Democrat, frankly. And so no wonder why we have so much tension in the church. Because you watch Jesus love people where they're at, and that sounds very complicated as a culture. And so let's rise above politics. How about that? That's an interesting idea. And meet people literally and bring people to a place of Jesus following where we get to be a part of a movement. Therein lies the beauty of the church, really saying, I'm here for you. And that's when the culture will be changed. So you hear what I'm saying, to be real clear, and then I'll wrap it up here as we pray together. The mission is really clear. It starts with us. And so I'm not going to stand up here week after week just casting stones at how bad the world is, because it starts with us just saying, you know what, I want to love people where they're at. Because this has always been the mission, truly the mission that Jesus has called us to through Peter. I'll pull it all together with this. Listen to Peter's words. He said, you live as an exiled people, so you're chosen. You're a chosen people. This is to the church. You are a royal priesthood. You are a holy nation, God's very own possession. This is God's mandate to the church. We are God's possession. As a result, because of all of this, because God has set you apart, you can now show others the goodness of God. For he called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That's good stuff. And I want to join in with that. And I hope you'll join me. And I hope we'll keep moving forward together. I'm so grateful for your teachable spirit today. I think the best thing I can offer right now is just a prayer of sanctification over these words. And I know it's heavy and I know it's tricky, but I hope you hear my heart in this. We got to get this one right. And as a church, we're going to figure it out together. I don't have the answers totally yet, But together, I think we can totally find answers as we all collectively have conversations about this. So let me pray over us and just and listen to what God wants to say to each of us right now. Lord, I am humbled by your words through Jeremiah. I am humbled at your call to us as your chosen people, a royal priesthood. You have called us to rise up and really be your venue of love into this world. And so help us, God, help me to pray for my enemies. I've been hurt by people so many times. Help me, God, to truly, really pray for their prosperity, to pray for their peace, that then together we will all experience peace. So thank you for your love, for pouring into Babylon when your children were exiled there. And in so doing, you have called us all of these years later to do the same thing. Forgive us, Lord, here, just as it goes for us locally here right now. As we look at the bigger church right now locally, I pray for your forgiveness for the ways in which we have loved power or pleasure or prosperity more than you. We just, again, pray for your cleansing. Set us apart so that we can be set apart for the world. Prepare our hearts that this week we can love that coworker at work that causes so much pain for our life. God, give us that courage to really literally bless our neighbor who maybe we have a rift with. Maybe a family member who's harmed us. God, give us the courage to show your love to that person who may right now just truly be lost and just choosing self all the time. I thank you for the privilege of being a part of Cornerstone. And I thank you that we, for 30 years, have been able to be a church that has just been really on point of connecting with you and connecting you with the world. Help us to do this well. Help us to figure it out as we navigate these really, really, really choppy waters. But God, you're the one who makes the storm, the choppy waters, still. And so we claim your miracle over this message today. God, if I've said anything here that's not of you, just let it die from our memories. But the things that are of you, may they bear fruit, truly sow seeds into our spirit and bear fruit forever and ever and ever. And so thank you that you've called us to be truly your church for this culture that so desperately needs some real agape love straight from the heart of heaven for this world. Thank you that you've used us as your vessel. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I think the only way to respond right now is to stand and just worship our Lord. So let's sing loudly and proudly and just get filled with the Spirit as we sing and experience a response moment right now for the Lord.